Hello, hello, hello. Good evening on this beautiful Sunday afternoon, evening. It is 4 o'clock p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And I am so excited to come to you on this channel. This is what is going to be one of many of my 5-minute little catch up topic, if you will, and this is part of a bigger presentation. So I have been talking a lot about how in 2025 one of the main focuses is going to, at least the first quarter, we're going to be talking a lot about boundaries and setting healthy boundaries and things like that. So I am super excited to start the conversation. So this is going to be just about a 5-minute live discussion about boundaries. So I'm going to get right into the conversation. If you're watching this on the replay, definitely leave your thoughts in the comments. If you're watching this live, thank you. Either way, I am glad you are here. So we're talking about boundaries, and a few of you actually sent me messages around the topics or some of the challenges that you have with boundaries. I heard things like people pleasing, things like that. So we're going to talk about it. So the first thing that I want to discuss are signs that you are lacking healthy boundaries. So let's get into that. So I'm going to break it down into kind of 3 areas. The first one are actions. So actions that show that you may be lacking healthy boundaries. Of our list there, we find that a huge sign of lacking healthy boundaries is when you feel like you have to make everyone happy. And when we talk about people pleasing, we're not just talking about necessarily everyone, but the people who are in your life. There are certain people who you feel that you have to you can't say no to them. You have to please them. So that's the first thing. The second thing is overcommitment. So again, if you are overcommitting yourself, you know that you really don't have the bandwidth, you really don't have the time, the space, but you're committing to helping someone, to doing something for someone. Those are that's the first category of actions. Now, there are a ton more actions, but again, my goal is to keep this just 5 minutes. So I'm just giving you a little taste, and then we'll continue to expound upon this as we go on. So the next category of ways that you can tell that you have you're lacking healthy boundaries are your emotions. So I really always encourage people to tap into how you feel, right? So if you're doing things for people, if you are committing and your emotions, you're dealing with sadness, you're dealing with anxiety. And here's one that people don't often associate with an emotion, but you're dealing with resentment. If you're dealing with those emotions, those could be signs that you are having a lack of healthy boundaries. All right. And then the last section on this particular topic today is physical. So did you know that when you are not having healthy boundaries in your relationships, that your body will physically also let you know? And it's really important to note that and to pay attention. Some of those signs are body aches, also tired, and then also constant illness. Have you noticed that maybe you're always getting headaches or you seem to always just not be feeling well? It could be based on you're overextending yourself. You're not having these healthy boundaries. Remember, the body, the mind, body, emotions are going to tell you when it's not happy, when you're doing too much, when you're not aligning yourself appropriately. So that's one area. The second side of things that we're going to talk about in the next couple of minutes are steps to overcome. Now, again, I'm giving you a very basic level of information for this particular conversation, but I do want you to know that you can go to my bio. I have a link in there to my most recent ebook, which has a whole chapter on boundaries. It's about overcoming trauma from family relationships and things like that, but I have a whole chapter on boundaries with exercises for you to do. So click that link in the bio to get that if you want a longer conversation around that. With that being said, the first thing, and if you've ever worked with me in my coaching, if you read my books, I'm always about self-awareness. So, first thing to overcome unhealthy boundaries is to be self-aware. I want you to first identify your needs, your values, your wants. And ask yourself, when was the last time that you really checked in and could define and articulate what are your needs? What are the things that you want? What makes you happy? What makes you sad? I want you to really get in tune with that. And a few ways that you can do that are by journaling, taking time to do some self-reflection, and then also working with a coach or mentor. And even more serious times, you could even contact a therapist. But that's going to be the foundation of setting healthy boundaries, being self-aware. The second thing is to identify the consequences of no boundaries. So again, it's going back to that self-aware piece, right? When I don't set healthy boundaries, what are the consequences to me? How do I feel when my boundaries are not being respected, or when someone is not aligning themselves with my boundaries? What is that impact to me personally? I want I'm looking at the comments here. I want you to really get in tune with that. Okay, I see a question. What's the difference between people pleasing and forgetting and forgiving? Ooh, I love that. So again, this is going to be an individual, great question. This is going to be really an individual thing. I am all about forgiving and moving forward, right? But people pleasing really is based on the emotion behind it. And you can gauge that by how you feel after the fact. So if you are compromising your own mental health, your own mental wellness, your own physical health, your time, if you are consistently compromising that for someone else, and then you're left feeling either anxious or resentful or tired or some of those other things I mentioned, then that's where you have to really ask yourself, am I truly just being kind and forgiving, or am I actually people pleasing? The people pleasing phrase really is when it's at compromise or conflict to you. I hope that helps clarify that. And again, we can get more deeper into that. I get into that a little bit more in that book, but hopefully that's a good gauge for you to kind of understand. It's really taking that pulse of yourself, and no one can even tell you that, right? No one can say for you, well, this was people pleasing or this was too much. It really is about checking in with yourself. And then, awesome, great. And so then the third thing that I will talk about, and this is often the hardest one, and that is to define, again, we're talking about how to overcome unhealthy boundaries, not setting boundaries. Define the consequence to the person. And this is so key. We often will think we're setting boundaries, but we haven't really established what happens if that person does not respect that boundary. So let me give you an example that can put it into perspective. If you see a sign that says, don't walk here. Now, you might take a peek, and if you don't see there's any reason not to walk there, you might kind of hesitate. But especially if you see other people walking, what are you going to probably do? You're going to assume maybe that sign is old, maybe it's not important, and you very well may tiptoe and try to see, well, can I actually walk over here? And then if nothing happens, guess what? You're going to continue to walk. You're going to assume that sign really means nothing. That's what you can think of when we talk about setting boundaries. If you set a boundary with no consequence to the person if they break that boundary, then you haven't actually set a boundary. Often we are in relationships where we're saying, I don't like it when you treat me this way. I don't like it when you monopolize my time. I don't like it when you say this or do this or all these things. I don't want you to do those things, but then we have no consequence for if that boundary is broken. So I want you to really think about, as you're going through this list and you're thinking about what is the consequence to myself if I don't respect my boundaries? And then what is the consequence to the other person? And can I really enforce that? And listen, there is nothing wrong if right now you're not able to enforce it. Years ago, when I would work with victims of abuse, I would tell them all the time, don't say, if you do this again, I'm going to leave. If you know right now you're not going to leave, there's nothing wrong with that. If you're developing your safety plan, if you're putting things in place so that you can be in position to leave, there's nothing wrong with acknowledging, I know I can't leave right now for whatever reason. So don't put that out there, because what happens is it becomes null and void. The person now has no respect for you because it appears as though you don't really set healthy boundaries. So I want you to think about that. If a person breaks my boundary, what consequence can I enforce? Maybe it's that you just separate yourself from them. Maybe it's that you make certain choices that they may not even notice immediately. Or maybe it's something even firmer. Maybe it's so detrimental that if they break these boundaries, that you limit your association with them, that you're cutting them off. Maybe now they become a person that you talk to on your time once a year, or whatever the case. But it's very, very important that you set boundaries that you're comfortable with enforcing. So that is it for today. I told y'all I was giving y'all just a little snippet. I will be doing more of these, I'm calling them kind of like my 5-minute kind of check-in. Oh, but I do want to leave these conversations with an affirmation. So again, if you're watching this live, if you're watching the replay, I want you to actually say this affirmation out loud. So today's affirmation, as we talk about boundaries, is this: I honor my needs and protect my peace. The cost of ignoring my boundaries is too great, and I choose to prioritize my well-being. Setting limits is an act of self-love, and I deserve relationships that respect my worth. Doesn't that feel good? It feels good to me. So I want you all to use that affirmation. Pause this, say it with me, say it after me, write it down, save it in your notes, save this live that you can go back to. But again, we're talking about, at least for the first part of this year, we're really diving into boundaries, because at the core of our relationships are about the boundaries that we set. So again, I'm Liletta Harlem. I am helping you to transform and break barriers so that you can be the best person that you can be. I'll talk to y'all later.